Hi, friends. This is getting really hard to talk about, so I think after this I will be done for the day. Um, Honestly, I might be catching up with where I am currently in my story. I just might end up sharing some extra details, perhaps, maybe. Hmm. So, um, we do it alone, just the two of us. We move across the country. He stays behind to clean up where we were living, which after his parents was in a trailer. Uh, just painting, repairing, the usual stuff. Um, and you got to keep in mind that at this point, like, I feel safe. We're married, and I have this complete metamorphosis from sexually appealing and wanting to be sexualized and um glammed up to I didn't want to be looked at anymore. I didn't want to be seen. I cut all of my hair off up to an inch or two. Um, I dressed in baggy clothes. I did buy dresses to try to see how I felt in them, but I never wore them. I just felt so uncomfortable in my skin and my body that I didn't want to be perceived. Uh, I didn't feel like a human. I didn't feel like a woman. I didn't feel like a man. I felt like just this blob of a human being. Um, and it was around this time that the dissociating got really tough, really big. Like, pretty much where I was always wrapped up in this blanket of numbness and distance. And I'm going to describe it the same way again of like, I was watching myself. I was aware of what was going on, but I had no emotional connection to it. Um, Literally, like I was watching a movie I was half interested in. Like when you're watching those movies in elementary school, and they're ones that they make you watch like every single year, so you've seen it 14 billion times. And so you're just like only half-heartedly watching because you already know how the story ends. Um, that's how it felt. And while he was gone, he was gone for a month. I was in our new place alone. And while he was gone, I began to have this thought about how much I enjoyed being alone, how much I relished not having to be around anyone, having to talk to anyone, not having to put this facade up. I could just go home, pet my cats, and do whatever the fuck I wanted. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I didn't have to bring anybody into it. Um, and so by the time he got there, I had this sinking feeling in my chest like, I don't want to be married. Um, and that's a heartbreaking thing to think that if I would have acted on those thoughts, where would I be today? But I talked to him about it. He told me that we could talk about it and he would do anything I wanted, which honestly just made me hate myself more. But I realized it was a lot less about not wanting to be married and a lot more about not wanting to be Keeb's wife. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to be Taylor. I wanted to be Taylor, and I got this first taste of being Taylor this month that I was alone. Um, that I didn't want to become Keeb's wife. I didn't want to just be a wife. I wanted to be a person with thoughts and feelings and intention and ambition, and I didn't feel like I could have those things and be with someone. Um, so we talk it through. I explained that to him. I apologize. Um, he told me he would always give me the space to think about my emotions and my thoughts, and that he wasn't angry at me, and he loved me. Um, time went on, I got good at the job. I was not ready for the job, by the way. Like, my interview was horrible. Um, did not deserve to promote. I was not ready to promote by any means, but I lived up to it. I did well. Um, but my anxiety drove into work. I was always quiet. I was always reserved. My chest always was tight. I was terrified of talking out of turn or for having someone disagree with me. But there's a fun fact about the field of work that I do is that people are going to disagree with you and that you have to learn to back up your claim. Um, which took a long time for me to get to that point. So, about not too long after we moved here to the state, um, I was sitting there having those same thoughts about I don't want to be here. I don't want to be alive. But I was taking it a step further and I was getting back into those thoughts like when I had cut my wrists of like, you should do this. You should do that again, but do it better. What would they do if what would happen if I just took an entire bottle of olanzapine? And once those thoughts are in your head, it's a really slippery slope. And it directly impacts your thought process towards yourself, towards the world, and your actions. And it did that for me. I remember one day I was sitting on the couch having these thoughts, and I looked at Keeb, and he was smiling at me, and my chest hurt so badly. It was excruciating. It was like I couldn't breathe, I couldn't function. I didn't have words. I don't have words for how this felt. All it was all consuming, like this feeling could kill me alone. And then he asked me what's wrong, and I looked at him and I saw our future, and in it I looked like my mother. And so when I responded, I said, Keeb, I want to go to therapy. He was very supportive, very encouraging, even though it was expensive. Um, at this point, I was spending close to $500 a month on my mental health with the therapy, but I did it. And my first therapist was more like a friend. She talked through things with me. We talked about anything I wanted to talk about. Her name was Allison. I had her for the first year. Um, and it helped. It hurt so bad to talk about these things. But for the first time in my life, I had someone on the table that was just sitting at the table listening to me speak. And instead of judgment, instead of criticism, instead of judgment, I already said judgment, instead of like the hatefulness I had always anticipated when I had this conversation in my head, um, she gave me a gift. And that gift was the first representation I had of softness towards myself. And with that, she gave me this prompt and she said, think about your husband. And now imagine that he told the story that you just told me, but it was his story. How would you feel? And so I did. I took a second to really center myself and think about things, and I was like, I would be devastated. I cried thinking about it. Just thinking about it, I cried for him in this life that he lived, even though he didn't, and I did. And that was the first time that I ever called it abuse. Um, so I continued therapy. I continued forcing myself to use that position like I'd always did for others. I'd always been like, well, I can know what they feel like because I put myself in their shoes. And now it's like, I know how I deserve to feel because I put Cave's shoes in mine. I put Elle's shoes in mine. I put John's shoes in mine. Every friend I'd ever had was in that place, and the feeling was still the same. It was like, what did I go through? Like at that point, I didn't have a single memory of my childhood. I just had a feeling. And that feeling was sinking. And it was like a hole in my chest that just like spread to the edges. Um, it was fire. It was, it felt like murder. It felt like death. And so to have this person to talk them through with, who not only gave me tools to work through my issues, but she also gave names to the things I'd chalked up as character flaws, like the mood swings, like dissociation, like what suicidal ideation was. Because I defended myself, like for a long time, I wouldn't call myself suicidal because I wasn't doing anything. I was just thinking them. And she just gave me this kindness. Um, and I miss her to this day. She left the platform. Um, the platform I used was BetterHelp. Um, so time went on, and at the beginning of last year, I was diagnosed with pre-diabetes, because I had gained weight, so much weight from the medication. And so my prescriber, um, swapped my mood stabilizer out for one called Lamictal, and it made for a really interesting year. I'll tell you something. I know I was gonna stop it here, but I'm gonna do one more, I think, because I want to talk about Lamictal.